Sarah Dawson had always been different from the women in her small mountain town. While others stayed close to home, working at the diner or tending to their gardens, Sarah's life revolved around discipline, strength, and loyalty. Traits she shared with her two canine companions, Titan and Luna. She wasn't just a dog lover. She was a highly trained K-9 handler who had served alongside elite military units. Now on leave, she decided to enjoy some quiet time hiking through the scenic trails that surrounded her hometown. The morning air was crisp as Sarah loaded her gear into her old but reliable truck. Titan, a sleek Belgian Malinois with piercing eyes, sat alert in the passenger seat, while Luna, a graceful yet powerful German Shepherd, rested calmly in the back. Both dogs were more than pets. They were partners, trained for high-stakes missions ranging from search and rescue operations to apprehending suspects. Their bond was unshakable, forged over years of rigorous training and mutual trust. After driving for an hour, Sarah pulled into a roadside diner known for its hearty meals and rugged charm. It was a popular spot for bikers passing through town, and today was no exception. The parking lot buzzed with the rumble of motorcycles and the laughter of leather-clad riders. As Sarah stepped out of her truck, her tactical gear catching the sunlight, heads turned. Whispers rippled through the crowd. A woman dressed like a soldier? With those dogs, what could she possibly know? One biker, tall and broad-shouldered with tattoos covering his arms, sauntered over. His name was Razor, the unofficial leader of the group. He smirked, leaning casually against his bike. Well, what do we have here?" he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "A little lady playing soldier with her mutts." His words drew chuckles from the other bikers, who began gathering around. Some made jokes about how cute her dogs looked, while others questioned why someone like her would even need such animals. Sarah ignored the taunts, focusing instead on checking her equipment and ensuring Titan and Luna were comfortable. But the mocking continued. "Hey, sweetheart," another biker called out, pointing at Titan. "You think your puppy can bite, or does it just wag its tail all day?" Titan's ears perked up, sensing tension in the air. He let out a low growl, his body stiffening slightly. Sarah placed a calming hand on his head, signaling him to stay relaxed. She knew better than to let emotions get the best of her, or her dogs. Still, the disrespect stung. These men didn't understand the level of skill and dedication required to train and work with military-grade K-9s. To them, she was just a target for their amusement. As the banter grew louder, one of the bikers decided to test the situation further. Ignoring Sarah's warnings, he reached toward Titan, trying to pat him on the head. In an instant, Titan snapped to attention, his teeth bared in a silent warning. The biker stumbled back, startled, while his friends burst into laughter. "You're quick to bark, aren't you?" Razor sneered, crossing his arms. "But let's see if your dogs are as tough as you claim, or are they just show dogs dressed up for fun?" Sarah finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. "My dogs are trained professionals. They're not toys or props. If you want to find out what they're capable of, I'm happy to show you." Her confidence caught the bikers off guard. For a moment, there was silence. Then Razor grinned, clearly intrigued by the challenge. Little did they know, Sarah wasn't bluffing. And soon, they'd learn exactly what happened when you underestimated a woman and her dogs. The air grew thick with tension as the bikers closed in around Sarah, their laughter echoing off the diner's metal walls. Razor, still smirking, took a step forward, his boots crunching against the gravel. "So, soldier girl," he said, dragging out the words, "you really think those dogs of yours are worth all this fuss? Or are you just trying to look tough for the crowd?" Sarah didn't flinch. She stood tall, her hands resting lightly on Titan and Luna's leashes, her posture calm but alert. The dogs mirrored her energy. Titan's muscles were coiled like springs, while Luna's sharp eyes scanned the group, ready for any sudden movement. To anyone who knew what to look for, it was clear these animals weren't ordinary pets. They radiated focus and discipline, traits honed through years of training under Sarah's guidance. But the bikers weren't convinced. One of them, a wiry man with a scruffy beard, leaned down and waved his hand mockingly in front of Luna's face. "Aw, look at this one," he teased. "She's so scary. What's she gonna do? Lick me to death?" Luna let out a low growl, her lips curling back just enough to reveal her teeth. The biker froze mid-wave, suddenly unsure if he wanted to push his luck. His friends laughed nervously, egging him on, but even they seemed a little uneasy now. Sarah gave Luna a quick pat on the side, silently reminding her to stay composed. "I warned you," Sarah said evenly, her tone cutting through the noise. "These dogs aren't here to entertain you." Razor, however, wasn't about to back down. He stepped closer, his towering frame casting a shadow over Sarah. "All right, tough girl," he said, folding his arms across his chest. "Let's see what your highly trained mutts can actually do. Prove it, or admit you're full of hot air." A murmur rippled through the growing crowd of onlookers. Some had come from inside the diner, drawn by the commotion, while others were passing bikers who stopped to see what was happening. Everyone seemed eager to witness whether Sarah would rise to the challenge or fold under pressure. For Sarah, though, it wasn't about proving herself. It was about standing up for the respect she and her dogs deserved. "Fine," Sarah replied coolly, meeting Razor's gaze without hesitation. "What do you want to see?" Razor grinned, clearly enjoying himself. "How about we make this interesting?" he suggested, gesturing dramatically. "We'll give you a chance to show us what your dogs can do. If they impress us, I'll apologize." He paused for effect, then added with a smirk, "But if they don't, well, you'll have to leave town looking pretty foolish." The other bikers hooted and hollered in agreement, loving the idea of turning this into a spectacle. Sarah, however, remained unfazed. She glanced down at Titan and Luna, who were watching her intently, waiting for her next command. She knew exactly what they were capable of, and she also knew these bikers had no idea what they were getting themselves into. "Deal," Sarah said simply, extending her hand toward Razor. He hesitated for a split second before shaking it, perhaps sensing that he might have underestimated her. As the crowd began buzzing with excitement, Sarah turned to survey the area. There was an open field nearby, perfect for demonstrating her dog skills. Without another word, she led Titan and Lana toward it, the crowd trailing behind like moths to a flame. As they walked, Sarah felt a mix of emotions swirling inside her. On one hand, she was irritated by the bikers' arrogance and refusal to take her seriously. On the other, she couldn't deny the thrill of knowing she was about to show them exactly what she and her dogs were made of. This wasn't just about winning a bet. It was about earning the respect she'd worked so hard for. Behind her, the bikers kept up their taunts, throwing out comments about how adorable Titan and Luna looked and how Sarah was probably wasting everyone's time. But Sarah tuned them out, focusing instead on the task ahead. She knew the real test wouldn't be the dog's abilities. It would be whether these men could swallow their pride when they finally saw what she and her team were truly capable of. The open field near the diner quickly became the center of attention as Sarah led Titan and Luna into position. The grass was tall in places, swaying gently in the breeze, and the space was wide enough to give her dogs room to move freely. Word had spread fast about the challenge, and soon a crowd of curious onlookers surrounded the area. Some leaned against their motorcycles, arms crossed, while others stood in small clusters, whispering and speculating about what was about to happen. Even a few families who had been enjoying lunch at the diner wandered over, their children pointing excitedly at the sleek, alert dogs. Razor strutted to the front of the group, clearly relishing his role as the self-appointed judge. He turned to face Sarah, his confidence unwavering. "All right, soldier girl," he said, his voice carrying over the murmurs of the crowd. "Let's see what your little show is all about. But I'm warning you, if this turns out to be some lame dog trick, don't expect us to take it seriously." Sarah didn't respond. Instead, she focused on preparing Titan and Luna for the demonstration. She knelt beside them, speaking softly as she checked their harnesses and gave them reassuring pats. Her calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the chaos around her, drawing more than a few admiring glances from the spectators. To anyone watching closely, it was clear that Sarah's bond with her dogs went far beyond mere obedience. It was a partnership built on trust and years of hard work. Once everything was ready, Sarah stood up and addressed the crowd. "My dogs are trained for military operations," she explained, her voice steady and commanding. "They're not here to perform tricks or entertain you. What you're about to see is a display of precision, teamwork, and discipline." She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "If you respect them, and me, you'll stay back and let them do their job." Her tone left no room for argument, and even Razor seemed momentarily taken aback by her authority. Still, he wasn't about to admit defeat before the demonstration even began. With a shrug, he gestured toward the field. Fine. Let's get on with it. Show us what these so-called warriors can do." Sarah nodded and stepped back, giving Titan and Luna enough space to move. For a brief moment, she closed her eyes, taking a deep breath to center herself. When she opened them again, her expression had shifted, calm but focused, like a conductor preparing to lead an orchestra. She raised her arm and gave the first command: "Heel." Instantly, Titan and Luna sprang into action, moving in perfect unison as they circled her, their steps synchronized down to the last detail. The crowd fell silent, mesmerized by the sight. These weren't ordinary dogs. They moved with purpose, every muscle under control, every motion deliberate. Sarah's next command sent them sprinting across the field, weaving through imaginary obstacles with breathtaking speed and agility. They leaped over fallen branches, zigzagged between markers only they could see, and returned to her side in seconds, sitting perfectly still as if frozen in place. Even the skeptical bikers couldn't hide their amazement. Razor scratched the back of his neck, his smirk faltering slightly. Okay, he admitted grudgingly. "That's kinda impressive, but anyone can teach a dog to run around and jump. Big deal." Sarah didn't rise to the bait. She simply smiled faintly and signaled for the next phase of the demonstration. This time, she introduced a series of commands that showcased the dog's intelligence and problem-solving skills. Titan retrieved a hidden object buried beneath the grass, while Luna flawlessly executed a complex sequence of maneuvers involving distance, timing, and coordination. Each task was completed with such efficiency that even the most hardened skeptics found themselves nodding in approval. As the final exercise wrapped up, the crowd erupted into applause. Though Razor and his gang remained quiet, their bravado noticeably dimmed. They hadn't expected this level of skill, not from Sarah, and certainly not from her dogs. But Sarah wasn't done yet. She knew the real test was still ahead, and she intended to leave no doubt in anyone's mind about what Titan and Luna were truly capable of. The applause from the crowd was still ringing in the air when Sarah raised her hand, signaling for quiet. She knew the first part of the demonstration had impressed many, but she also understood that Razor and his gang weren't fully convinced. To them, the drills might have seemed like elaborate tricks, impressive, sure, but not necessarily practical or threatening. Sarah wasn't about to let them walk away thinking her dogs were nothing more than performers. It was time to show them what protection and control truly meant. "All right," Sarah said, her voice cutting through the lingering chatter. "Let's move on to something more challenging. My dogs aren't just trained for obedience. They're trained to protect." She glanced at Razor, who crossed his arms and raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "Would one of you be willing to help demonstrate?" Razor hesitated for a moment, then smirked. "Fine, but don't blame me if your mutts embarrass themselves." He turned to one of his gang members, a burly biker named Tank, and jerked his thumb toward Sarah. "You. Go ahead. Show her how tough we are." Tank stepped forward, trying to appear confident despite the uneasy glances he shot at Titan and Luna. The two dogs stood motionless by Sarah's side, their eyes locked onto him like lasers. Their calm demeanor was almost eerie, as if they were waiting patiently for instructions. Sarah gave Tank a nod. "Don't worry," she said evenly. "This is controlled. Just follow my lead." She positioned Tank a few feet away from her and the dogs, explaining the scenario. "Pretend you're attacking me," she instructed. "But remember, my dogs will respond exactly as they've been trained, to neutralize the threat without causing harm." Tank nodded, though his bravado seemed to waver slightly. He squared his shoulders and took a step toward Sarah, raising his fists in mock aggression. For a split second, nothing happened. Then, with lightning speed, Titan lunged forward, positioning himself between Sarah and Tank. At the same time, Luminov circled around, cutting off any chance of escape. Both dogs growled low, their bodies tense and ready to act. Tank froze, his eyes wide with surprise. He hadn't expected them to move so quickly, or with such precision. Before he could react further, Sarah gave another command. "Hold." Instantly, Titan pinned Tank's leg to the ground with gentle but firm pressure, while Luna stood guard nearby, her teeth bared in a silent warning. Though neither dog made contact with skin, the message was clear. Any real threat would have been neutralized immediately. The crowd erupted into murmurs of astonishment. Even Razor looked unsettled, shifting uncomfortably as he watched the scene unfold. Tank raised his hands in surrender, laughing nervously. Okay. You proved your point," he said, backing away slowly once Sarah signaled the dogs to stand down. Sarah knelt beside Titan and Luna, praising them softly before turning back to the group. "This isn't about intimidation," she explained. "It's about protection. These dogs are trained to assess situations, respond appropriately, and stop threats without unnecessary force. They're tools of safety, not weapons of violence." Her words hung in the air, met with nods of understanding from the onlookers. Razor, however, wasn't ready to concede defeat just yet. He cleared his throat loudly, drawing everyone's attention. "Fine," he admitted reluctantly. "That was impressive. But it's still not enough to prove they're as skilled as you claim. Let's see if they can handle something harder, something real." Sarah met his gaze steadily. "Name it," she replied, her tone unwavering. "They're ready." And deep down, she knew that whatever challenge came next, Titan and Luna would rise to the occasion. Razor's eyes narrowed as he considered Sarah's calm confidence. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by someone who didn't fit his idea of tough. But there was something about the way Sarah carried herself, steady, composed, and utterly sure of her dogs, that made him hesitate. Still, pride wouldn't let him back down now. If anything, it pushed him to raise the stakes. "All right," Razor said finally, his voice louder so everyone could hear. "Here's the deal. We'll hide one of my guys out there in the woods." He gestured toward the dense tree line at the edge of the field. "If your dogs can find him, and fast, you win. No tricks, no excuses, just pure skill." His lips curled into a smirk. "But if they fail, you admit you're all talk and leave quietly." The crowd murmured in anticipation. This was the ultimate test: tracking and apprehension, skills that separated trained professionals from ordinary pets. Sarah didn't flinch. She'd worked with Titan and Luna on countless search and rescue missions, navigating far more challenging terrains than this patch of forest. To her, this wasn't a gamble. It was an opportunity to prove what she already knew. "Agreed," Sarah replied, her tone steady. "But remember, these aren't games for them. Once they're on the job, they don't stop until they succeed." Razor waved off her warning, clearly dismissing it as bravado. Yeah, we'll see." "Tank," he called out, pointing to the burly biker who had earlier pretended to attack Sarah. "You're up. Go hide somewhere deep. Make it hard for those mutts." Tank nodded and jogged toward the woods, disappearing between the trees within seconds. The crowd watched intently as Sarah turned to Titan and Luna, kneeling beside them to prepare them for the task ahead. She spoke softly, her words barely audible over the rustling leaves, but her body language said everything. Both dogs perked up, their focus razor-sharp. They knew what was expected of them. After giving Tank a solid 10-minute head start, Sarah stood and signaled for the dogs to begin. With a sharp whistle, she released them, pointing toward the forest. Titan and Luna shot forward like arrows, their noses close to the ground as they picked up Tank's scent. The crowd pressed closer to the tree line, eager to catch a glimpse of the action. Minutes ticked by, and the suspense grew thicker. Razor paced back and forth, glancing nervously at the woods. He had underestimated Sarah before, but this time doubt crept into his mind. What if her dogs really were as good as she claimed? Suddenly, a loud bark echoed through the trees, followed by another. The crowd strained to see what was happening. Then, just as quickly, Titan and Luna emerged from the shadows, circling around a sheepish-looking Tank who had been crouching behind a fallen log. His face was a mix of disbelief and resignation as the dogs pinned him in place, barking loudly to signal their success. Sarah appeared moments later, moving swiftly through the underbrush. When she reached Tank, she gave a sharp command, and the dogs immediately backed off, sitting obediently at her side. Tank stood up, brushing dirt off his jeans, looking both impressed and embarrassed. "They found me faster than I thought," he admitted grudgingly. The crowd erupted into cheers, clapping and whistling as Sarah led Titan and Luna back to the clearing. Even Razor couldn't hide his astonishment. He approached Sarah, shaking his head slowly. "Okay," he muttered, avoiding eye contact. "You proved your point. Your dogs are something else." Sarah smiled faintly, patting Titan and Luna affectionately. "They're not just something else," she corrected gently. "They're partners, and they never give up." The mood in the clearing shifted dramatically as Sarah and her dogs returned from the woods, their success undeniable. Titan and Luna trotted proudly at her side, their heads held high, while Tank trailed behind, still brushing bits of dirt and leaves from his jacket. The crowd, which had been buzzing with skepticism earlier, now erupted into applause. Even those who had doubted Sarah couldn't deny what they had just witnessed. Her dogs were not ordinary companions. They were highly skilled professionals. Razor stood near the edge of the group, his arms crossed and his usual swagger noticeably absent. For the first time that day, he looked unsure of himself. His gaze flickered between Sarah and her dogs, as though trying to reconcile the image of the calm, unassuming woman before him with the reality of her undeniable expertise. Finally, after a long pause, he stepped forward, clearing his throat. "All right," Razor said, his voice quieter than before, but still carrying enough weight for everyone to hear. "You proved your point. Your dogs, well, they're impressive." He glanced down briefly, almost as if admitting this was physically painful for him. Then, looking up, he added gruffly, "I'll keep my word. I'm sorry for underestimating you. And them." It wasn't the most heartfelt apology, but it was genuine enough to earn nods of approval from the onlookers. Some of the bikers even clapped, breaking the tension further. One of them, a wiry man with a leather vest covered in patches, stepped forward and extended his hand toward Sarah. "That was something else," he said, shaking her hand firmly. "Never seen anything like it. You've got some real talent, lady." Sarah accepted the compliment graciously, offering a small smile. "Thank you," she replied simply. "But remember, it's not about me. It's about respect. Respect for skill, for teamwork, and for knowing when someone knows what they're doing." Her words resonated with more than just the bikers. Families who had gathered to watch began approaching her too, their children wide-eyed with admiration as they cautiously reached out to pet Titan and Luna. Sarah knelt beside the dogs, guiding the kids on how to interact with them safely. "They're friendly," she explained, "but always ask permission first, and never approach a working dog without its handler's okay." As the crowd dispersed, some heading back to the diner and others mounting their bikes to leave, Razor lingered nearby. He watched silently as Sarah packed up her gear, occasionally glancing at Titan and Luna, who remained alert but relaxed by her side. After a moment, he cleared his throat again and spoke. "Look," he said awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck, "we might have started off on the wrong foot. How about we make it right? Dinner's on me." Sarah raised an eyebrow, amused but cautious. "Dinner?" "Yeah," Razor replied, gesturing toward the diner. "My guys and I. We don't usually eat crow, but today feels like an exception. Come on, let us buy you lunch. Least we can do after, well, after all that." Sarah hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "All right," she said with a faint smile. "But only if you promise to stop calling my dogs mutts." Razor chuckled, holding up his hands in mock surrender. "Deal. No more mutts. Scout's honor." As they walked back toward the diner together, the atmosphere felt lighter, less charged with hostility. Razor introduced Sarah to a few of his gang members, who shook her hand and complimented her skills. Inside, the diner buzzed with conversation, the earlier tension replaced by curiosity and newfound respect. Even the waitstaff joined in, asking Sarah questions about her work and marveling at the bond she shared with Titan and Luna. For Sarah, the experience was bittersweet. She hadn't sought out this confrontation, but it reminded her of why she did what she did, not for recognition or praise, but to prove that strength came in many forms. Whether it was through discipline, loyalty, or sheer determination, there was always a lesson to be learned. And sometimes, even the toughest opponents could become allies when shown the truth. The diner was alive with energy as Sarah, Razor, and his gang settled into a large corner booth. The clinking of plates, the sizzle of burgers on the grill, and the hum of conversation filled the air. It was a stark contrast to the tension that had dominated the parking lot just an hour earlier. Now the atmosphere was warm, almost celebratory, as if the entire town had collectively exhaled. Razor flagged down a waitress and ordered enough food to feed a small army: burgers, fries, milkshakes, and even a slice of pie for Sarah, who politely declined anything too extravagant. "You've earned it," Razor insisted, pushing the dessert toward her. "Besides, we're celebrating. Not every day you meet someone who can put us in our place." Sarah chuckled softly, cutting into the pie with her fork. "It wasn't about putting anyone in their place," she said, her tone measured but kind. "It was about showing what respect looks like, and maybe proving that assumptions aren't always right." Her words hung in the air, prompting nods from some of the bikers seated around the table. One of them, a quieter man named Hawk, leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "So, how'd you get into this line of work anyway?" he asked, genuinely curious. "Don't see many women doing whatever it is you do." Sarah took a sip of her soda before answering, her gaze thoughtful. "It started with a love for dogs," she explained. "I've always been fascinated by how smart they are, how loyal. When I joined the military, I realized I could combine that passion with something bigger: helping people, saving lives. Training canines became my calling." She glanced at Titan and Luna, who were lying patiently near the booth, their heads resting on their paws. "These two aren't just my partners. They're family. Everything they do reflects years of trust and hard work. They're not perfect, but they're committed. And so am I." The bikers listened intently, their earlier bravado replaced by genuine interest. Even Razor, who had spent most of the day mocking Sarah, seemed reflective. "Must take guts to do what you do," he admitted gruffly. "Not everyone would have stood their ground like you did today." Sarah shrugged modestly. "It's not about guts. It's about knowing your worth and standing up for it when others don't see it. That goes for people and animals alike." As the meal continued, the conversation shifted to lighter topics. Razor shared stories of life on the road, while Sarah talked about her travels during her military service. Despite their differences, there was a surprising amount of common ground. Both groups valued loyalty, strength, and resilience. By the time the check arrived, the initial animosity felt like a distant memory. Before leaving, Razor pulled Sarah aside, his expression unusually serious. "Listen," he began, fidgeting with the strap of his leather jacket. "What happened today? It won't happen again. Not from us, anyway. We'll make sure word gets around. About you and your dogs. You've earned our respect." Sarah nodded, appreciating the gesture. "Thanks, Razor. That means a lot. Just remember, respect isn't given because someone wins or loses. It's earned through understanding and action." With that, they shook hands one last time, sealing the newfound truce. As Sarah walked back to her truck, Titan and Luna trotting happily beside her, she couldn't help but smile. What had started as a confrontation had turned into something far more meaningful, a lesson in humility, mutual respect, and the power of leading by example. For the bikers, the experience left a lasting impression. For Sarah, it was simply another reminder of why she chose this path. To inspire change, even in the unlikeliest of places. As Sarah drove away from the diner, the sun dipping low on the horizon painted the sky in hues of orange and pink. The gravel crunched beneath her tires, and the rhythmic hum of the engine seemed to echo her thoughts. Beside her, Titan rested his head on the console, while Luna sat upright in the back seat, her keen eyes scanning the road as if still on duty. For a moment, Sarah allowed herself to breathe, to reflect on the whirlwind of events that had unfolded over the course of just one day. It had started with mockery, disrespect, and doubt, a storm of arrogance that could have easily spiraled into hostility. But instead, it had transformed into something unexpected: understanding. Those bikers who had once dismissed her as someone unworthy of their attention now saw her for what she truly was: a skilled professional, a leader, and someone worthy of respect. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about planting seeds of change where none seemed possible. For Razor and his gang, the encounter served as a wake-up call. They'd prided themselves on toughness, freedom, and living life on their own terms. Yet today, they had been reminded that true strength isn't about dominance. It's about recognizing when you're wrong and having the courage to admit it. As word spread through the biker community about Sarah and her dogs, attitudes began to shift. People talked about the woman with the military-trained canines, not out of fear, but out of admiration. Some even joked that Razor's crew might start carrying dog treats instead of attitude. But for Sarah, the real victory wasn't in changing minds. It was in reinforcing her belief in teamwork, discipline, and perseverance. She glanced at Titan and Luna, her heart swelling with gratitude. These dogs weren't just tools of her trade. They were living proof that loyalty and hard work could overcome any obstacle. Together, they had faced challenges far greater than a group of mocking bikers, missions that tested their limits physically, mentally, and emotionally. And yet, here they were, still standing strong. The drive home gave her time to think about the bigger picture. In a world quick to judge based on appearances, moments like this mattered. Whether it was breaking stereotypes about women in male-dominated fields or showcasing the incredible potential of animals, often underestimated, every action counted. Every lesson learned rippled outward, touching lives in ways she might never fully understand. When she pulled into her driveway, the quiet familiarity of her small house brought a sense of calm. Titan bounded out of the truck first, followed by Luna, both eager to stretch their legs after the long day. Sarah smiled as she watched them chase each other around the yard, their playful energy a stark contrast to the precision and focus they had shown earlier. This was their reward for all the hours of training, all the sacrifices made along the way. Freedom, joy, trust. Later that evening, as she sat on her porch sipping a cup of tea, Sarah reflected on how stories like hers could inspire others. Maybe a young girl watching from afar would see that being tough didn't mean sacrificing kindness, or perhaps a skeptical adult would realize that assumptions could blind them to greatness. Whatever the impact, she knew she had played her part. In the end, it wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about showing what was possible when you believed in yourself and your team. For Sarah Dawson, there was no greater legacy than that. And as the stars began to twinkle above, casting a soft glow over the mountains, she felt at peace knowing she had made a difference, one paw print at a time.